In Maplecrest Village, life followed the rhythms of everyday suburban ritual. Morning sprinklers arching into sunlight, neighbors waving as they collected mail, youngsters zigzagging along driveways in chalk-marked races. It was a neighborhood created for ease, founded on common assumptions and an unremarkable form of privacy. For years, the harmony held, with only the occasional rumble of a property dispute or the sharp whiff of frustration at another email from the HOA. Then, one fog-misted Monday, the balance changed. At first, no one noticed the change. The cameras were little, softly hidden against eaves and lampposts, their lenses unnoticeable beneath plastic casings. They melded into the building, almost as if they had always been there. But within days, a few eagle-eyed residents got suspicious of the new glints in the gutters and the inconspicuous wires snaking down from rooflines. It wasn't a notification in the mailbox or a lively debate at the yearly picnic that revealed the truth. Instead, it was the silence, a weird absence of communal gossip and of the tiny offenses usually recounted over coffee or mumbled in passing. The HOA remained tight-lipped, saying everything in the area was for resident safety and improved standards. No elections had been taken, no permissions issued, and no explanations offered for the unexpected installation of electronic eyes. Paranoia seeped in as neighbors began to trade notes. Packages arrived and departed without the pleasant wave from the porch. Conversations on lawns felt stilted and unfinished. Children stopped playing freely near the lampposts. Parents looked skyward with worry rather than fun. It was as if the neighborhood itself had drawn inside, trading its carefree attitude for something a bit claustrophobic. Within days, residents mustered the resolve to question the HOA, seeking answers and demanding openness. The board replied with sterile formality, sending emails that referenced unfamiliar security initiatives and upgraded property management protocols. When pressed, board members insisted that data was secure and unmonitored, dodging direct questions about how footage was being used or where it ended up. Trust shattered further, replaced by rising wrath. The cameras caught everything: comings and goings, garden routines, fights over parking, even pets nosing near fences. For many, it became a test of patience and dignity. Was every movement on the block now subject to unseen review? Would the next HOA fee come with devastating video footage to justify pruning hedges a day late or leaving recycling bins too long on the curb? Fears developed, but eventually, resentment brewed into action. If privacy could be stripped without notice, then it could also be challenged in ways never previously imagined. Within the community, a few creative souls, parents, teachers, artists, and restless teens, decided to transform concern into humor. It began with a simple idea. If they were being watched, they could select how they were seen. The first comedy scene was staged in full front of 3 cameras. A group of neighbors dressed as spies, reading false classified notes out loud. Laughter rang out across lawns, and for the first time in weeks, people grinned instead of staring anxiously over their shoulders. Soon, a new tradition took root. Residents improvised wild, theatrical scenes. Pantomimed heist attempts using garden gnomes as loot, exaggerated yoga sessions conducted in coordinated, wobbling formation, and imitation talent showcases judged by cardboard cutouts of local celebrities. Families choreographed dance moments and play-acted dramatic soap opera confrontations, complete with homemade costumes and accessories. Every performance was filmed by the HOA's cameras by design. What started as a daring jest got speed. Skit footage was edited and released online, shared with local forums, and eventually expanded to bigger social platforms. Clips from Maplecrest's camera zone appeared in meme threads and viral video montages, each tagged with hashtags like #WatchedAtHome and #SuburbanShowtime. Comments flooded in from around the world, praising the neighborhood's creative blend of protest and comedy. The HOA, struck by the huge popularity of Maplecrest's pranks, was flustered. What was designed to be a quiet system of oversight had generated a global spectacle. Instead of evidence of transgressions, the cameras captured proof of joy, innovation, and communal resistance. The board issued warnings about misuse of HOA property, but the momentum of Maplecrest's humor was too great to contain. The neighborhood, previously fearful and divided, finds itself united in laughter. Residents who had never communicated before collaborated on new comedy ideas. The feeling of surveillance dissipated, replaced by the pride of reclaiming control over how their lives were portrayed. And so, the stage was set for a showdown between the HOA's rising frustration and Maplecrest's irrepressible energy. The world watched, entertained and inspired, eager to see what heights the inhabitants would reach, and how far the board would go to save face. The next chapter would find the comedy rising, the HOA scurrying, and Maplecrest's insurrection pulling in new friends from beyond their own block. The weeks following the first sketches hitting the internet saw Maplecrest Village transformed from a hamlet under quiet threat to a bustling stage for artistic resistance. The air hummed with anticipation and covert preparations. The neighborhoods that had whispered about hidden cameras now buzzed openly, their fear scored through with feverish enthusiasm. Every resident, whether performer or viewer, became a participant in the new play. Surveillance was no longer a shadow. It was the spotlight for a rising cast. Neighbors scheduled their comedic acts with a precision befitting Broadway. Early mornings brought farcical gym classes, in view of the pole cameras. Yoga instructors whirling pool noodles and pensioners dressed as disco dancers leading parade-like stretches. Evenings saw soap opera send-ups. Families marched to the curb for faux dramatic readings, shouting over-the-top story twists to the pleasure of surrounding window spectators. Teens coordinated multi-house flash mobs, their laughter reverberating as they moved in colorful, synchronized waves over the yard. Footage from the skits appeared everywhere. A retired teacher edited recordings into a faux daily news anchor report, screening weather updates and local scandals on the community's private social feed. A group of parents planned the Maplecrest talent show, organizing auditions and even manufacturing bogus golden awards for comic excellence. Residents organized costume themes, having pajama parties and superhero days, always making sure the lens would catch their brightest activities. The HOA's inbox overflowed with complaints, not about nuisance or disorder, but about the cameras being used as creative instruments for community bonding. Some board members sought to retaliate, threatening fines for public disruption. But the legal ground was murky. There were no rules banning joy, just those that addressed privacy and security. Residents rallied, citing their right to express themselves on their own property, and requested the board justify the purpose and expense behind the spy device. For every new warning, the skits grew increasingly elaborate. Support flooded in from outside Maplecrest. Regional influencers picked up the idea, conducting camera dances and curbside cosplay in support of the village's resistance. Comedy podcasts deconstructed the acts, marveling at Maplecrest's ability to turn discomfort into digital material. City legislators began to challenge the need for unannounced surveillance in residential zones, inviting Maplecrest performers to speak at council sessions and convey the consequences of the HOA's concealment. Internally, the energy changed. Collaboration flourished. Neighbors who had never crossed paths co-wrote screenplays and erected spontaneous sets with lawn furniture, cardboard boxes, and holiday lights. The anxiety of being monitored vanished as the sense of a common cause developed. Now, every glance at a camera was a wink, every walk across the grass a move in a shared choreography. Children devised games, daring each other to make the camera laugh, developing new pranks and challenges every week. Meanwhile, the world's interest snowballed. Clips went viral, Maplecrest was interviewed for national news, and memes trended across platforms. Jokes about living in Maplecrest flowed into mainstream culture, and the term, "if you're going to watch, you'll see a show," became a rallying statement for privacy campaigners everywhere. Through the lens, Maplecrest's spirit sparkled. Every skit becomes a piece of performance art, defiance masked as play, vulnerability rendered powerful through humor. Elderly people donned costumes and joined the parade. Children created their own scripts, and couples celebrated anniversaries in elaborate musical pieces. Instead of closing off in dread, the block opened itself to joy, pride, and connection. The HOA, facing tremendous embarrassment, fought for control. They commissioned independent assessments, published panicky new guidelines, and even pondered shutting the system. Yet every step was met by a fresh round of viral sketches and an avalanche of positive press. Local papers praised Maple Crest as the funniest neighborhood in America, and advocacy groups highlighted them as a living example of comedy's ability to unite and defend. As the chapter drew to its break, Maple Crest was no longer merely watched, it was leading. The entire community now prepared for a new round of protest, with the Globe cheering them on and the cameras powerless to stop the laughing. Next, the HOA would seek escalation, threatening lawsuits, doubling down on enforcement, and unknowingly fanning the fire that would turn Maple Crest's comedic rebellion into an unstoppable force. As autumn rolled into Maple Crest Village, the world beyond its limits knew its story. The viral suburb where the watched had become the watchers, where monitoring had bred spectacle. But among the beautifully maintained lawns and meandering paths, the comedic rebellion had matured into something more than protest. It was now about identity, pride, and a struggle between the force of a community and the dogged bureaucracy of an HOA determined not to surrender. The HOA board, left reeling by viral news and repeated criticism, met in an emergency session. Their rage echoed through emails and notes. The president, Tom Carver, pressed for tougher measures, a veil of fines for conduct unbecoming and threats of legal action for public disturbance on HOA-monitored land. Residents entered mailboxes to find dense envelopes, each letter more desperate and contradictory than the last. But the funny network held strong. Legal counsel via the neighborhood group chat arrived faster than skit scripts. Several residents, trained in litigation, took apart the HOA's arguments, noting contradictions and lack of precedent. Online privacy expert volunteers stepped in, authoring op-eds that spotlighted Maple Crest's situation as a warning lesson for devious board practices worldwide. The state's representative was tagged hundreds of times on social media and encouraged to make a public statement. Maple Crest had gone well beyond lamppost cameras. Now it was parliamentary theater. The skit creators doubled down. Each additional fine was greeted with greater effort and greater attention to the ludicrous. The Maple Crest Crime Report staged neighbors stealing garden gnomes, only for the gnomes to be returned washed and dressed with hats. The Emergency Yoga Squad performed interpretive dances for every camera, mocking the apparent necessity for monitoring by exaggerating basic action to comically epic proportions. One family posed as TV news anchors, reporting on local disruptions anytime a squirrel crossed a driveway. New characters emerged. Maple Crest superheroes patrolled the sidewalks, mock-fighting over who could trim their hedges in the most spectacular fashion. A group of grandmothers arranged tea and reconnaissance, scrutinizing each other's lawns for top-secret evidence and inviting visitors for biscuits and talk. Every act was filmed and promptly posted, accruing viewers and shares with each passing day. The HOA, desperate for a semblance of dignity, issued cease and desist letters, warning residents about copyright, public nuisance, and misrepresentation of HOA interests. The community's legal volunteers crafted biting, creative responses, usually posted on social media and read aloud for the cameras. These documents became comedy itself, gathering lawyers, comedians, and celebrities to advocate for Maple Crest's right to mock and protest. National sources staged live seminars presenting Maple Crest's most prolific talents. Advocacy organizations jumped in, some offering pro bono legal protection, others making mini-documentaries on life under local surveillance. The excitement fed into a new cause: calls for legislative reform, increased openness for HOAs, and direct contact with families whenever neighborhoods sought invasive actions. Beneath the comedy, Maple Crest came closer. Old distinctions went away. A block once separated by age, culture, or politics was unified by participation and shared purpose. Parents started new routines, children drafted play ideas in spiral notebooks, and retirees found belonging as script directors and costume designers. The act of performance became the act of community. Every day was a rehearsal for the values they now defended collectively. With the world watching, the HOA faced questioning from city officials. An inquiry was initiated into the expense, privacy, and legality of the cameras, triggering a larger debate regarding resident rights. Several board members quit, afraid to be a punchline or a blame. The The president attempted desperately to characterize the uprising as an unfortunate distraction, but the viral torrent of laughter only grew louder. As Halloween drew near, Maplecrest hosted its largest prank yet, a haunted security camera tour, where each home concocted eerie situations for the lens, pirate ship fights, ghostly dance troupes, castles plagued by costumed invaders, all shot for their audience online. Costumed youngsters performed choreographed routines, and every camera was decorated with garlands, flags, and handcrafted jokes. The tour finished in a neighborhood festival, free to anyone, with food, music, and prizes for the most creative performance. The HOA issued the last, now ignored, warning. But Maplecrest has changed the balance. Laughter had won hearts, inspired activists, and made it hard for the board system to go undetected or unopposed. As the leaves fell and the event ended, the HOA's power diminished. The neighborhood readied itself for the final round, the day when the board would be forced to answer, cameras would come down, and Maplecrest's story would be immortalized as a testament to resistance, creativity, and the enduring spirit of a community that simply refused to be watched without consent. The next chapter would bring the crescendo, the city's ruling, the camera's removal, and global celebration of Maplecrest's victory. As winter steadily arrived, anticipation in Maplecrest Village reached fever pitch. News vans idled on streets, city officials puzzled over reams of viral footage, and practically every home counted down to the long-awaited public hearing. This was the moment the entire insurrection seemed constructed for, the day the cameras would be assessed not by the HOA's exclusive rules, but in the light of city law and global scrutiny. The hearing was a spectacle in itself. City council chambers crowded with Maplecrest residents and allies, some in costume, others brandishing signs splashed with the skit hashtags that had energized their protest. Advocacy organizations gathered legal teams, digital privacy experts presented testimony, and notable community figures were ready with remarks about what it meant to feel safe, respected, and free in one's own home. The board arrived under pressure, Tom Carver impassive but plainly shaken. Their legal counsel spoke first, presenting the cameras as state-of-the-art neighborhood safety measures, and downplaying reports of emotional anguish. They referred to bylaws enabling property management enhancements, but the room simmered with suppressed outrage. Maplecrest citizens recognized the difference between protection and intrusion. When the floor opened, the humor that had hidden their privacy suddenly fueled their activism. Residents exhibited the best sketches, projecting compilations over the chamber's screens and asking everyone to laugh. But there was gravity too. Parents reported training their children to respond to monitoring with creativity, elders spoke of loneliness replaced by the thrill of collaboration, and teens described discovering confidence via collaborative art. Privacy experts referenced Maplecrest's skits as proof that surveillance without authorization led to community and legal criticism, and that the true aim of security was to empower, not control. Mental health professionals stepped up with statistics, tying unfettered surveillance to increased fear and distrust, arguing that Maplecrest's comedy could have minimized harm, but removal of the cameras was the only true answer. The city's council members posed pointed questions about expense, necessity, consultation, and disclosure. Maplecrest's own lawyers supplied research of HOA regulations, statistics about homeowner consent, and instances of other neighborhoods where similar upgrades had failed horribly. The argument was clear. Safety should never come at the expense of dignity, and whatever benefits the cameras gave were swamped by the damage to trust and community. After hours of testimony, debate, and widespread media attention, the vote was called. Cameras would come down. City code was revised to require full resident agreement for any future surveillance systems in neighborhoods around the region. Maplecrest's inventive opposition had earned not just victory for their own streets, but a precedent for privacy well beyond their block. Removal day dawned sunny and cold. Residents, media, and city officials gathered as workmen tried to destroy each camera. With every lens removed, applause filled the air. Families performed one final skit for every device, turning the procedure into a festival of closing. In houses and yards, neighbors rejoiced together, hugging, laughing, and capturing the event for the archive. A final comedy, marking the end of a drama that had united them. The world saw this denouement. Supporters communicated congrats. Digital privacy groups disseminated toolkits for other communities experiencing similar surveillance. Late-night talk shows replayed Maplecrest's greatest moments, while documentary teams filmed the shift from terror to ecstasy. The HOA, chastened, made a public apology, vowing new openness and democratic rights for homeowners. The board's leadership was reshuffled. Tom Carver departed, replaced with members chosen for their dedication to openness, empathy, and true neighborhood service. As the sun sank, Maplecrest shone with strings of lights and music. A public festival finished with the planting of a freedom tree in the village's central park, a living sign that the right to solitude, joy, and unity had weathered every threat. But Maplecrest was no longer merely a neighborhood. Its legacy radiated forth. Communities around the country referenced its skit rebellion as a pattern, inspiring new acts of creative resistance and encouraging residents to stand up for their homes, their happiness, and their right to be seen solely as they choose. The setting was set for the last chapter, Maplecrest's viral story memorialized, and the quiet revolution changing futures far beyond the reach of any camera. In the months following the removal of the notorious cameras, Maplecrest Village bloomed in ways few could have expected. The insurrection that had begun with clandestine surveillance and unfolded through comic sketches ended in a wave of togetherness, pride, and hope that washed across the world. Old scars from days spent staring suspiciously up at plastic lenses healed as laughter returned to the sidewalks, and the sense of ownership over one's home and town grew deeper with each morning. Spring came to Maplecrest with an intensity remarkable even for this bustling suburb. Lawns, formerly the stage for protest, now hosted festivals, block parties, and neighborhood celebrations. The Freedom Tree stood at the heart of the community, its branches laced with ribbons and handwritten notes, thank yous from residents, tourists, and those inspired beyond the town. On weekends, family came to read poetry and conduct delicate, cheerful performances beneath its shade. No longer was performance an act of defiance. It became a tradition of memory and thanks. Local schools urged residents to share their story. Elderly neighbors narrating the history of the village found new pleasure in the changes their community had prompted. Changes that stressed cooperation, friendliness, and humor over secrecy or terror. Artists painted murals of the renowned Maplecrest moments on fences and utility boxes, immortalizing superhero grannies, synchronized lawn dancers, and the legendary ghost camera tour. What had once humiliated the board now welcomed tourists, students, and even neighboring HOAs searching for advice and inspiration. The new HOA board, established by and for the people, became a national example for open governance. Regular open sessions sought ideas, respected dissent, and addressed policy with input from everybody. Technology was demystified. Every new tool or suggestion was voted on, publicly appraised, and altered based on the requirements and comfort of the residents. Maplecrest's ordinances, revised with privacy and artistic expression at their core, echoed in city halls and councils far beyond their territory. Across the internet, sketches were replayed continuously, finding their way into documentaries, television specials, and virtual workshops. Hashtags that started as jokes transformed into rallying cries for digital privacy. Hashtag We Choose the Show, hashtag Eyes on Our Terms, and hashtag Maplecrest Model were used in campaigns from cities wrestling with surveillance policy to small communities fighting for dignity and discourse. Advocacy groups established seminars themed upon Maplecrest's path, training people to utilize humor, unity, and media attention in the face of oppressive authority. At the heart of this movement, the true legacy was found in lives transformed. Neighbors who had never spoken suddenly shared routines, established enduring friendships, and supported each other through adversity and celebration. The fears of being observed gave way to confidence and ease. Youngsters grew into teens proud of the tale their block had told, carrying the lessons of courage and community into their schools, clubs, and early careers. The Christensens, who had filmed the first viral soap opera sketch, found themselves co-hosting the new Comedy Day event alongside Maplecrest's oldest resident, Mrs. Patel. Together, they invited new artists, promoted fresh performances, and handed out Freedom Awards to neighbors who'd expressed their own tales most creatively. The sense of play that previously pushed back against fear was now the anchor that kept the community resilient and connected. Media visits diminished. However, Maplecrest remained a landmark. The Freedom Tree grew, growing higher and broader every season, a living tribute to what togetherness in the face of hardship could achieve. The neighborhood's tale was carried down not just in local tradition, but in textbooks, city archives, and the memory of every family who had ever dared to stand up and be seen on their own terms. One bright evening, as the sun sank over unmonitored rooftops, Maplecrest gathered for their yearly curtain call. Residents performed acts old and new, laughter blending with the wind and optimism with remembrance. Children ran in the dusk, not chased by anxieties, but shepherded by pride. As darkness sank, the last act finished not with applause for defiance, but with calm satisfaction in belonging. The common confidence that Maplecrest's actual power was its people and the story they chose to tell the world together.